Hi, I'm Dad the Engineer, and today I'm going to cover two inexpensive macro deck options. These days it appears that dedicated macro pads, decks, controllers, whatever, are pretty popular. Elgato, Megalodon, Razer, and Keychron have options that are marketed as best of breed. They're also extremely expensive for what they are. And that's really what this video is about, getting the least expensive solution possible. My use case pertains to the audio, image, and video editing that goes into making my videos. Basic as they are, these videos are still pretty work-intensive, spanning a few programs and using several features in each. Sure enough, each of these programs has keyboard shortcuts for cutting down the workload for invoking frequently called functions. In my experience, there are a couple inevitabilities with these shortcuts. 1. The more shortcuts a program has, the less intuitive and the longer the shortcuts get. 2. The more programs you use, the tougher it is to remember any given program's less frequently used shortcuts. Unfortunately, the more obscure functions also tend to be the ones buried deeper in a program's menu structure. Even if your workflows are different, it's likely that you can still benefit from a solution that keeps you from having to use your program menus so much, or remember unintuitive keyboard shortcuts. None of this is new, and there have been solutions for this for decades. Going way back, there were overlays that went on keyboards. Anyone remember WordPerfect? When I was coding more, I got SteelSeries Apex keyboards from my developers. If it was a mechanical keyboard with blue switches, I'd still be using mine. 22 macro keys with 4 layers for a total of 88 macros that could be easily called. Ah, those were the days. But what could I do now, and how little could I spend? With that in mind, I went to my local micro center and got a wireless number pad with the intention of loading AutoHotInterceptor and using HID macros. It's a solution that works, though it does require a bit of work on the setup side. Certainly, it's not plug and play. I started recording a video showing step by step how to set everything up. When the video started to get uncomfortably long, I decided to do more research and try to find something easier for the more faint of heart. Frankly, I was surprised how many devices were out there and shocked how inexpensive some of them were. I settled on 2 devices. The first is the Sayo 24-key mechanical keypad. At $25, this is about as inexpensive a solution as you're probably going to find. The material and build quality of the keypad seem pretty good, especially given the low price. There's RGB, if you're into that. I'm not judging. The software is where you see the downsides of selecting an unknown brand. Rather than downloading a configuration utility that's locally installed, you go to the vendor's website. The page then asks you for permission to connect to your locally connected HID keypad. It seems to work well, but there is the question of what happens if the vendor goes out of business. You lose the ability to change your keypad's configuration. The actual configuration of the keypad macros isn't that bad. Simultaneous key press macros are very easy to set up. I had a shortcut that required 5 sequential key presses, and the setup was a little less intuitive. I used the password mode to implement that. The blank keycaps aren't terribly useful. The standard keycaps mean that you should be able to get some printed keycaps if you want. The TLDR here would be that this thing is $25. It works, and it doesn't require any exotic software. In fact, once it's configured, you don't need anything PC side at all, which is amazing. It's also Linux and BSD friendly. Whether you just stick some Dymo labels on the keys, or you go all out with custom dye sublimation keycaps, it's worth noting that $25 is probably not an all-inclusive price. If I do use the Sayo going forward, it will probably just be for Visual Studio. 24 keys is a decent number of macros, and the device handles inserting text pretty well. The fact that the Sayo does not require computer-side hardware makes it easy to move between my main coding workstation and my work laptop. The second device is the Ulanzi D200 U Studio. At $54, I think it's the least expensive LCD button pad available, and notably, it's less than half the price of the Elgato Stream Deck Mark II. So what do you get? Well, once upon a time, there was a piece of vaporware called the Optimus keyboard. Sure, they eventually delivered something, but it was years later and way more expensive than promised. The main feature of the keyboard was that the individual keys were actually small displays, much like the Ulanzi and several other function decks. This concept eliminates the need to figure out how to label your keys. It also makes it more practical to make do with a lesser key count, since you can usually toggle between the function sets and see the results in real time. That works well for my workflows, but isn't as good a trade-off if you need lots of functions within a single application. For that, there are solutions like the Elgato Stream Deck XL with 32 keys. Alternatively, you can use AutoHotInterceptor and HidMacros with something like a 60% or an 83-key keyboard. The Ulanzi D200 has 15 keys. It's built pretty well, and it feels like a quality piece of equipment. Like with so many inexpensive solutions, though, the software lacks some polish. The installer weighs in at 180 megabytes, but the driver and utility installs quickly and doesn't throw any Windows Smart Screen malware detection messages. It also doesn't require you to set up a user account anywhere, which is a plus in my book. Despite some warnings on the Amazon product page, the Ulanzi Deck software installed and launched in English. There are some traces of Chinese origins here and there, but there's nothing that keeps you from using the software. As far as the configuration of the deck goes, you can easily set up pages, folders, or custom profiles that you swap between. Functionally, there's not much difference between these mechanisms. I set up my D200 to switch between profiles for different applications. I did this mostly because it looked like the profiles would automatically switch based on the application window focus, but that turned out not to be the case. It's not a big deal because I dedicate a button on each non-default profile to take me home. The deck can sit at a keyboard-like angle on the desk, but I found that to not be ergonomically that great, as you can't see the screens that well. The screens are recessed about a quarter inch from the top of the buttons, and the buttons are surrounded by aluminum. This results in me not being able to see the button titles. You can move the titles to the top of each display, but that's kind of beside the point. I want to see the buttons. The included deck stand is plastic, and it puts the display at a 45-degree angle. There are anti-slip pads which keep the unit put. Based on the viewing angles of the buttons, I'm assuming they're OLED. That's fine, but it's worth noting that the maximum brightness of the displays is not that bright. It does look good to me though. The only problem that I had with the D200 was that I couldn't get one of my macros entered for Paint.net. I needed the button to simulate the sequential pressing of the M key and the S key 4 times. This is different than most of my other macros in that the others are sending multiple simultaneous key presses, like Control Alternate V. On the Sayo, I was able to program the MSSSS macro by setting the text string to one of the password slots on the device and designating the keys to send the password. A little janky, for sure, but it worked. On the D200, there's a similar facility for sending a text block, but I just couldn't get it to work. I did a little digging and figured out why. The D200 injects text by copying the macro text block into the Windows clipboard and then performs a paste. Sweet Lord, that's not how you do that. In any case, my application did not appreciate that approach, and I don't appreciate the device clearing my clipboard. Boo. Aside from that, the device is great, and the software is pretty intuitive. It helps that the software updates the device in real time and does not require any updates or restarts. So there you go. You now know about 2 of your cheapest macro pad options. If you really need a ton of macros at your fingertips and feel confined by 15, 24, or even 32 keys, then you still have the AutoHotInterceptor and HidMacros option available. There's adequate documentation out there on how to do that, so I probably won't ever complete that video. I'm including the Amazon affiliate links to the Sayo and Ulanzi in the video description below. If you buy one using my links, then it won't cost you any more, but it will give me a tiny commission on the sale. If you found this video to be useful and would like to see more like it, please like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm just getting this thing started and I could really use your help. Feel free to suggest, argue, or whatever in the comments below. Thanks and have an awesome day.